hardly expect you to understand. Ever since I've touched this thing, I've never been alone.
Happy holidays and welcome to ShockOrama, your source for all things shock, schlock, and just plain bizarre. I'm Ben Sherman, and today we will be continuing our yearly tradition of looking at an episode of the 70s BBC television series, A Ghost Story for Christmas. If you missed last year's installment, or you just need a refresher, A Ghost Story for Christmas was a one-episode-a-year anthology series adapting classic ghost stories to the screen. Most of the original stories were written by the British writer MR James, including this one. A Warning to the Curious was first published in 1925 in the London Mercury. It tells the story of an amateur archaeologist named Paxton as he hunts for the legendary East Anglian crown. And I must warn you right now that it is much darker than last year's installment, The Stalls of Barchester. This television adaptation was written, directed, and produced once again by the great Lawrence Gordon Clark, and would be the last episode that he was able to exert his full control over, as subsequent episodes would be produced by Rosemary Hill of the BBC's drama department, and would bring on other writers to create the screenplays. Also, despite the name of the series, this would be the last episode to actually air on Christmas Eve, until the series was revived in the 2000s. What I think really makes these films work is Lawrence Gordon Clark's real love for the works of MR James. In an interview I found on an archived version of the now defunct movie review site Smug Film, Clark is positively gushing about how great of a writer MR James was. Some sections I found particularly interesting are when Clark goes into detail about specific aspects of MR James's writing that most influenced his directorial decision-making while creating Ghost Stories for Christmas. Quote, "James has a genius for imbuing objects, usually from the past, with an implacable malignity. The bronze whistle in Whistle and I'll Come to You, the Saxon crown in A Warning to the Curious, the runes in Casting the Runes. His objects are truly frightening because they resonate with our deepest and oldest fears, born when our furthest ancestors crouched at night by the campfire, trembling at the threats that the surrounding darkness held. A whistle blown could summon a demon or a mighty wind. A crown is buried to protect the coast from invasion, and it has its guardian that will punish anyone who touches it." Clark continues, quote, "The other great quality James possesses is his ability to evoke English countryside, towns and villages, particularly on the eastern seaboard. Even today, you can find some of the places he writes about virtually unchanged, and finding locations was one of the most important and enjoyable parts of making these films. One such iconic location is the setting of A Warning to the Curious. MR James had set his tale in the village of Seaborough, a fictionalized version of the real-life Aldeborough in Suffolk, England. But the filmmakers shot their adaptation in a couple different areas in North Norfolk, including Wells Next the Sea, Happisburgh, and Holcombe Gap. Because of the success of the previous year's The Stalls of Barchester, Lawrence Gordon Clark was given a larger budget and more creative freedom for this year's episode, and he decided to start by spending a week driving around Norfolk and Suffolk to look for these locations. Clark had also improved in other ways as a filmmaker, as evidenced by the small but meaningful changes he made to the story in order to adapt it to the screen. Like The Stalls of Barchester, A Warning to the Curious, as written by MR James, utilizes a narrative framing device where the narrator is relaying a story that someone else had told them to the reader. This kind of framing device was more common in older short stories like this, but it doesn't make for a very engaging movie, since it introduces another level of separation between the story and the audience, and also serves to only slow down the action of the plot. Clark wisely chose to do away with this framing narrative, instead jumping right into the story itself. Other changes include the murder of an archaeologist, only hinted at in the short story, being placed front and center right at the beginning of the movie, to immediately establish the very real danger that our protagonist Paxton is in throughout the movie. The character of Paxton himself is changed as well, going from simply an amateur antiquarian motivated purely by historical curiosity to a recently laid-off clerk searching for the Saxon crown out of financial desperation. As Clark himself states in the aforementioned interview, "I also made Paxton a victim of the Depression because it made him needier and more interesting than James's rather vapid young man. It let me cast Peter Vaughan, who I'd always wanted to work with, and utilize his driven, neurotic energy. Peter had just come from playing the homicidal farmer in Peckinpah's Straw Dogs, so he was well primed for the part. Peter Vaughan does a great job of portraying somewhat of an everyman, down on his luck and realizing that he's gotten in way over his head with his archaeological expedition. And it makes sense when you consider the long career he had as a character actor until his death in 2016 at the age of 93. Alongside his role in the 1971 film Straw Dogs, he was also in Terry Gilliam's films Time Bandits and Brazil, both highly recommended if you like surreal, off-kilter, sci-fi fantasy mindfucks.
Oh, let him go.
And he was also in the 1996 adaptation of The Crucible, yes, the one with Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder, and many of you probably remember him best from his final role in Game of Thrones, where he played Maester Aemon. Suffice to say, this guy is a capital A actor. Also returning would be Clive Swift, reprising his role as Dr. Black, who was the guy that was cataloging the church's library in the stalls of Barchester. Well, it's getting late, the candles are burning low, and there's a chill in the air, so I say it's about time we tell a ghost story to keep ourselves warm as we welcome the Christmas spirit. I present to you A Warning to the Curious. The movie opens with narration explaining the legend of the three Anglian crowns. Back in the Dark Ages, when Viking raids were a constant threat in the area, three Saxon crowns were buried in secret locations along the coastline. According to legend, as long as at least one of these three crowns remained undisturbed, the coast would never be attacked by foreign enemies. Over the years, one crown was found and stolen by bandits, another was lost to the sea due to coastal erosion, and now only one crown remains. The camera moves through the trees along the coast and we see a man digging, evidently searching for this third legendary crown. As the archaeologist digs, a strange man in worn clothes appears and tells him no digging here. The archaeologist scoffs and threatens to have the strange man locked up if he keeps harassing him, at which point the strange man picks up some kind of machete and hacks the archaeologist to death with it.
Digging!
Right away, we can see that this story is going to be much scarier and more immediate than last year's installment, The Stalls of Barchester. We also get no closure on this murder, as the very next shot is 12 years later as a train arrives in the station not far from where the murder occurred. The train drops off our protagonist, Mr. Paxton, shovel and suitcase in hand. He checks into a hotel and has an awkward interaction with the proprietor. The hotel man takes in Paxton's worn shoes and a newspaper headline proclaiming 3 million unemployed.
Must make a change from the daily grind, sir.
Yes, I suppose it does.
It's a small and quiet interaction, but it deftly sets up the desperate situation that Paxton is in. He is, of course, a victim of the Great Depression, later revealing that he had worked as a clerk for many years before recently being laid off. Before leaving, the hotel man tells Paxton that it's just him and Dr. Black staying at the hotel right now. Paxton asks if he can borrow a bicycle, and we see that he's been reading a book titled The Legend of the Anglian Crowns. Combine that with the shovel he brought with him, and it's clear that he's come here with a specific purpose in mind. Paxton wastes no time riding out to a very old local church. There he sees a carving of a strange coat of arms. An inhuman serpent-like creature is wrapped around a shield with 3 crowns on it. He also meets the Vicar, a very talkative middle-aged man who is more than happy to chat with Paxton about the legend of the 3 crowns. The 3 ancient Saxon crowns were buried in secret locations along the coast, and as long as at least one of them remains undisturbed, no foreign enemy shall ever attack the coast. I know I already explained this story earlier, but I think it's just a really cool story and it's worth hearing twice. The Vicar also tells Paxton that the story is still current folklore in this area. He tells Paxton that there was a local family who claimed to know the location of the last remaining crown, and during times of war they would watch over it to make sure it remained undisturbed. The last surviving member of the family had been a parishioner at the church, and the priest had tried to comfort him during his last days, but the man had been very upset because there would be no one left to watch the crown after he died. Paxton asks the Vicar if he knows where this last guardian had watched over the crown, but the Vicar doesn't know. Having only lived in the area for about 20 years, most of the locals still consider him an outsider, so his knowledge of local affairs is limited. He does point out the grave of this last guardian, though. The dead man's name was William Ager. His grave is in a very overgrown part of the cemetery since William had had no surviving family or friends to look after his grave. As Paxton examines the headstone, he feels someone watching him from the nearby beach. Next, Paxton visits a antiques and curiosities shop with some questionable taxidermy. The shopkeeper is a delightfully offbeat character who seems slightly perplexed at having a customer. Paxton asks about a human skeleton in one of the display cases, and the shopkeeper explains that it had been found inside a bridge that was torn down some years ago. He explains that burying human sacrifices inside of bridges was a somewhat common practice back in the Middle Ages, the idea being that the spirit of the person buried would protect the bridge against evil. He then brings up the London Bridge is Falling Down nursery rhyme.
London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Nursery rhymes are fascinating.
Now, this being a very specific reference to some ancient traditions inspired me to do some research. The idea that the London Bridge is Falling Down nursery rhyme was originally inspired by human sacrifice is an idea that was put forward by some historians and authors, including British folklorist Alice Gomme. She suggested that London Bridge had in centuries past been used as a site for immurement, an ancient torture and execution practice in which the victim would be placed in a confined space and left there to die. There are numerous examples of this practice occurring all across the ancient world, but there is currently no archaeological evidence to suggest that this was ever done at London Bridge. However, one thing I did find out during my research was that there is a rather macabre spot underneath Tower Bridge known as Dead Man's Hole. It apparently used to be disturbingly common for dead bodies to wash down the River Thames and end up stuck underneath Tower Bridge, so a space was constructed there to pull up the bodies and lay them out for family to identify. Needless to say, this one offhand comment in an old 70s Christmas ghost special has opened a rabbit hole of massive proportions for me, so if I'm late in my next couple uploads, you'll know why. Getting back to the movie, Paxton has come to this shop to find some old maps of the area, but ends up finding a bit more than that. A thick book on the table with the maps has that same 3 crowns coat of arms that he saw at the church, and upon further investigation, it turns out that this book is the Ager family Bible, the same Ager family that used to watch over the purported resting place of the 3rd crown. On his way back to the hotel, Paxton runs into Dr. Black. Yes, the same Dr. Black from The Stalls of Barchester, and played once again by Clive Swift. Dr. Black is a very nice gentleman who takes some interest in Paxton's archaeological exploits, but unfortunately doesn't know anything about the Ager family. He does recommend that Paxton check with the hotel man who we'd seen checking him into his room earlier, as the hotel man is a local man who knows just about everything that goes on in the town. But the hotel man claims to have never heard of any Ager family living in the area.
Seems very odd to me too, sir.
He does give a fearful look at the coat of arms on the Ager family Bible that Paxton brought back, though. The hotel man clearly doesn't want to mess around with any ghosts or powerful artifacts, and I can respect him for that. Paxton heads out on his bicycle again and spots the man who'd been watching him from the beach earlier. The figure goes around a corner and when Paxton follows, disappears, but Paxton is struck by something about the house he is now standing in front of. A dog runs out of the house and attacks him, and the woman who lives there rushes out and pulls the dog off of Paxton, promising him that the dog is usually very gentle and she's never seen him act like this before. Once they've calmed down and the dog has been put inside, Paxton asks the woman if she'd seen anyone come by just a moment before, but the woman says that she hasn't seen anyone all day. It does turn out, though, that this house she lives in used to belong to the Ager family, and she'd only recently moved in. Even though she hadn't moved in until after William Ager's death, she'd still heard some stories about him, and tells Paxton that William Ager apparently used to always go to this wooded area along the beach every night. Paxton immediately starts packing a bag to prepare to travel out to that little forested area along the beach. But something is off. He finds the Ager family Bible open with his razor sitting on top of it, the blade underlining William Ager's name. When Paxton peeks out of his window, he sees that same mysterious figure staring at him again from the street. Paxton boards the train and heads to the woodland. The reuse of many shots from the cold open, where the first archaeologist was murdered, we can assume by William Ager, definitely adds a feeling of suspense. However, William Ager is now no longer present to stop would-be thieves from plundering the crown. Paxton continues digging late into the night until his shovel hits something. We get this wonderfully creepy scene as he pulls out a human skull, the tip of a spear, and wait, was that someone walking through the woods behind him? Paxton keeps digging despite the rasping cough he hears behind him until he finally uncovers the ancient crown. As dawn breaks, Paxton flees the wooded area, pursued by an out-of-focus ghost in a surreal and dreamlike chase sequence. This is some peak folk horror for me, with all these close-ups of branches and twigs twitching in the breeze while Paxton tries to hide from the ghost. As he reaches the edge of the nearby village, Paxton comes face to face with a farmer holding that same machete tool that we saw William Ager use to murder the archaeologist in the opening scene. Paxton nervously scoots by, and as the farmer turns to watch, he sees that there has suddenly appeared a second figure following Paxton. Paxton makes it to the train station without incident, but after he boards the train, the conductor comes by and opens the door to his compartment for no one, and then apologizes, saying he thought he saw someone trying to get on.
Morning, Tip. Oh. Sorry, sir. Thought I saw somebody.
When he gets back to the hotel, he immediately hides the crown in his suitcase and then lets himself relax a bit. But not for too long, since he soon discovers that his razor has been used to slice up the Ager family Bible, and he starts hearing that same raspy cough from the dig site. Paxton heads out to the beach to clear his head, and there he finds Dr. Black doing a drawing of the landscape. They chat for a bit until a figure appears on the beach. Paxton immediately recognizes the ghost of William Ager, who's been following him for the past few days, and realizes that he needs to enlist Dr. Black's help. So he starts telling him everything. Back in Paxton's room with the curtains drawn, he tells Dr. Black the entire story and shows him the crown. Dr. Black is shocked when Paxton tells him that instead of selling the crown to a museum, he intends to rebury it where he found it. But of course we know that Mr. Paxton has good reason to feel scared of the crown, and he tells Dr. Black about all of the hauntings he's been experiencing, and then begs him to return with him that night to the site where he had found the crown. Dr. Black steps outside in the hall as he waits for Paxton to finish preparing for their trip to the woods, and there he hears that all too familiar raspy cough as a door closes behind him. The hotel man appears from the opposite direction, and Dr. Black asks if there's someone else staying at the hotel with them who just went in that room. But the hotel man explains that it's impossible, as the room is a store cupboard and he always keeps it locked. As Paxton finishes packing up his bags, a sudden breeze blows out the candle, thrusting the room into darkness. Paxton takes out his flashlight and looks around the room as we hear breathing and scratching sounds, and we catch a glimpse of the ghostly figure of William Ager kneeling over his suitcase. Paxton screams, which catches the attention of Dr. Black and the hotel man outside, who hurriedly unlock the door and open it, revealing what I personally find to be the most terrifying shot in this movie. Paxton is kneeling, facing away from the camera as he says,
He was here, you see. He came to take it back.
And then we zoom in on his suitcase, which is now covered in scratch marks. Dr. Black and Paxton head out to the woods together, and Paxton reburies the crown while Dr. Black keeps watch and sees a spooky face hidden in the trees. Paxton is in such a hurry to get out of there that he accidentally leaves his jacket on top of the mound. Dr. Black looks like he's about to go out and grab it for him, but then thinks better when he sees the ghost of William Ager walking around. The next morning, the hotel man walks outside in his shining shoes when he sees Dr. Black walk up and call for Paxton. Paxton walks out of the hotel and follows Dr. Black down the street, and then the hotel man does a double take when Dr. Black walks out of the hotel and asks him if he's seen Paxton anywhere. Now, how's that for some good old-fashioned ghostly tomfoolery? The hotel man tells Dr. Black where Paxton went, and also tells him that he was following a man that was the spitting image of Dr. Black. Meanwhile, once Paxton reaches the beach, he spots the ghost of William Ager, who chases him all the way back to the wooded area where the crown is buried. Dr. Black tries to follow, but struggles to keep up. By the time he does catch up, he knows he is too late, as he sees the figure of the ghost hacking mercilessly at Mr. Paxton with his machete. Dr. Black rushes over and sobs as he holds the bloodied body of Mr. Paxton. Presumably the next morning, Dr. Black walks morosely through the station and boards the train to leave Seaborough. He's a bit confused though when the station master opens his compartment door and warns nobody to watch their step, and then the station master quickly apologizes, saying that he thought he saw someone. We see a look of horror in Dr. Black's eyes as the train leaves the station, and that is how the movie ends. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this classic ghost story. I know I certainly had a lot of fun making this video about it. And with each one of these Christmas ghost stories, I just get more and more excited for the next one. I'm including links in the description to some of the articles I used during my research for this video, since they've got some interesting stuff in them, especially that interview with Lawrence Gordon Clark for the Smug Film website. I'm really glad that someone had the foresight to take a snapshot of it for the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, otherwise I wouldn't have even known it existed. And it has some really interesting information about quite a few of the films he made for this series, not just A Warning to the Curious. Well, that's all I've got for you this year, so happy holidays, and a happy new year to you all, and if you could just hit that like button on your way out, I would greatly appreciate it. And, as always, stay weird.